Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the SD.RB podcast. Today, Chris Van Pelt will be discussing Camping, a microframework built by Why the Lucky Stiff. Chris will also be previewing a camping app he built titled Croppr.
If you guys are ready, I am ready. Yep. Yep.
Okay, guys.
So my name is Chris Van Pelt. I live in Carlsbad, and I've been developing on Rails for just about a year now. I work for a company in Carlsbad. It's Helmets to Hard Hats is the name of the company. We're funded by the government, and we aid transitioning military guys and girls coming back get jobs in the construction trades. Hence, Helmets to Hard Hats. A lot of people think we sell helmets and hard hats, but we do not. So we've been, the site was originally written in Java and relatively poorly written in Java. So the past about 6-7 months, we've been redeveloping it, and it's been very challenging, but I won't go into that. We've had 3 redesigns. That's it, though. We reskinned the site. Okay. I'm going to be talking about camping, which is really sweet. So here we go. First off, I'll preface as to why I started using camping. What's that? Nice. I like it. I didn't even try. So it all started with my coworker, Tom Warner, who talked about math last time, if you guys were here. He created Gravatar, which is the globally recognized avatar. If you've never seen it, like Typo has Gravatar built in, as well as, how do I get in? Can I get in? Right.
Only if you work for UCSD. What's the password? Cool.
Okay. So Gravatar, it's a globally recognized avatar. You're basically on blog posts, mainly when you comment, to have an avatar and not having to sign up to that blog. It hashes your email address and goes to the Gravatar server and grabs your Gravatar. The bad part about Gravatar is that, well, there's a few things. There's a rating process because the Gravatars have to be rated. And then also you can't really crop the images, so the images have to be recropped. And you generally find that problem when you have to load up an avatar. So I thought to myself, doggone it, it would be nice if there was a better Croppr. So this, I guess I just said this. I'm getting ahead of myself. But an example of a bad Croppr would be, I noticed recently on Mog, that you can crop here, you draw your crop, and then you can't really resize the crop after you draw it. You could draw a new one, I guess, but then you can also drag the crop off of the photo. And the first time I did this when Mog first came out, it just aired out after that, but they fixed that since then, so I can't harp on it that much. But just an example of a bad Croppr. So I thought, well, it's time to make a new Croppr, and my inspiration came from iChat. So I was in iChat, and I have my avatar here, and I go to edit it, and it has this really sexy Croppr, which basically allows you to resize the image so that you actually see what the image is going to actually look like, as opposed to drawing a square, and you have no idea what that's going to look like once it gets resized. And you can drag the image around as well. But you can drag outside of the box. So I took it upon myself to make a better Croppr and a better web-enabled Croppr. So, oh dear goodness, what just happened? Okay, yes. JavaScript and Prototype were my tools. And it was a long and arduous journey. But I was successful in the end. And the Croppr was born. So here is basically the gist of the Croppr, and this is just pure JavaScript. It's a static file. It's just sitting on my hard drive. So what you're able to do, let me refresh it. These are just 2 pictures. You can upload pictures or whatever. Obviously, you can in the static file. But you see thumbnails here, and then you can go choose the crop size, and it brings the picture up in a lightbox type thing. And you're able to use, like this. This is actually the Scriptaculous slider that I borrowed code from. But you can do the same thing. It constrains it within the box, so you can't pull it outside of the box. Couple other nice features. Like here, if the image can be, really big, and if you hadn't cropped it before, it'll automatically resize the image to fit into your window, and then you can go back to the original size. It also constrains the image. It knows what to set the slider at, so that the absolute minimum is either going to be, the width or the height, and then you're constrained to just slide it up or down. And the last feature, which took way too long to implement, but it has a memory of, just allowing the input of telling it where the last crop was, so it can recenter the image on that crop. So, for instance, this specific crop, if you mouse over this, it says it was 300 by 300. I don't know if you can see that. So I can specify, whatever crop size I want. And it remembers where the image was positioned and what scale it was at when it was cropped. So that actually shows me the original crop that I had before. And there's a lot of really cool JavaScript stuff, but I won't get into that too terrible much. Because after I made this JavaScript library, I was like, how am I going to actually crop the images? Because I didn't want to make a big app to crop these images. It's not going to take much. And I had heard about camping. So I looked into it, and Y is the guy that gave it to us. He put on quite the show at RailsConf. But it's a really cool piece of code. It's tiny, and it allows you to do a lot, which I will demonstrate. So it's model view controller, just like Rails. It's just a really compact miniature Rails. It's designed so that you fit your entire application into a single file. Everything's in that one file, which is nice and fit my need well. So, models. Active Record kicks ass, and they simply used Active Record. So anything you can do with Active Record in Rails, you can do the same basically in camping. It uses SQLite to keep everything slim, which is very slick. I mean, it goes right along with the philosophy of camping, I guess. It can be a little bit of a pain to set up on a Mac. It's not too bad. There's a lot of instructions out there on how to do it. So for my purposes, I was thinking about just storing these images that I would upload in the file system, but instead I chose to use blobs, because then it's all in the SQLite database, and I don't have to worry about anything on the file system or permissions or anything like that. So I could actually show you the code. That would be good. This is the Croppr file. It's one file. This is a camping file. And basically, in the beginning, you require any gems that you might need for this project. Because I'm doing image manipulation, I use RMagic, which is a big pain to get on Mac OS. I put some instructions on my blog. I'm not sure. Also, HiveLogic put some up too. But it's worth it for sure, because the things you can do with ImageMagick are pretty slick, and with RMagic is very slick in a short amount of code. But basically, I'll get into a lot of the details. I'll go down to the models now. So as you can see, it looks a lot like a normal Active Record model that you would find in Rails. You define anything that you might need to access from it. You can do validation. And here's just an example of using ImageMagick. I can take data from, I can bring an image into ImageMagick from a blob, which just pulls from the SQLite database, and then I can scale it and crop it and move it all over the place and do all that fun stuff in a very small amount of code. Yes. Now controllers. So one real cool thing about controllers is that the routes are built directly in, so you don't. It's basically defining these routes in line, and it's actually pretty slick. So here again, here's my controllers, and every action in the controller is actually a class as opposed to a method, and there are two methods within that class, and they are get and post, which represent that very thing. So if you extend the class with capital R, that basically means that you're able to define these routes. So here I said index is actually, the root of the site. Here I can say when I want to pull an image from the database, I say images, and then within parentheses you can put a little regex expression, which then gets passed down to either the get or the post method as parameters directly to the method. So, and you can have multiple routes here. So basically what I did here is I said images at the ID of the image, which is just a series of digits, and that gets passed into the get method as an ID, or it can be the ID of the image and also with a type, because I might want to display the full image, a thumbnail of the image, or the cropped image. And the type simply defaults to full, and I can do a case here. So by doing that, you're able to have a lot of flexibility with your routes and do a lot in a really small amount of code. Here's an example of using the get and the post. With new, if I go to new, it's obvious. If I just go to the page new, it's obviously going to be a get, so it's just going to render my new view, which allows me to upload an image. And when I upload that image, I'm going to post a new, so that gets sent into the post, which does all the fun image creation stuff. You can also do some fancier regex stuff. Here's a good one, and I'll explain what that does a little later. Yeah. Another cool thing you can do, you can pass the blob directly to the browser. So in the cases of that image, I'm just sending the raw data straight out of the database to the browser, and I'm setting the content type header to whatever content type that image was. So I'm just telling the image that I'm sending a JPEG or a GIF directly to the browser, and I can, then basically refer to this route as an image on my file system, but it's taking it from the database. And then also by using the X send file header, you can send files from your file system relative to wherever your script is. So in a lot of the camping apps, they'll actually embed CSS directly into the source code, which is nice in that it's all there. But I don't have that much CSS, but I had a lot of JavaScript to get this Croppr done, so I didn't want to embed all that. So I just put those in separate files, and it's also a little more convenient to go edit that file, especially as a designer, rather than having to dig through all this code. So it's very easy to access raw files as well. And then basically at the end of each method, you can either redirect or render. So redirect it's just redirecting to the class that you want it to go to, or you can just call render, which will render the view. So with that, got it. The view. I don't know why I did that. I said view. You guys didn't need to see it, right? I'll tell you more about what this is doing. It's pretty slick too, but that's for the end. So enter markup-y, which was another one of Y's creations, which is markup for Ruby, which basically allows us to keep everything Ruby in this file so that we don't have a bunch of HTML in here. And if we go down to the views, you see that there are just methods which correspond to the given actions that you want to implement. You can also define layout, and that's just a normal layout like you would have in Rails. And you yield to self just like you do in Rails. Here, the scripts are being pulled from that xsend file model, which is extension, and then I just pass it the file that I want, and it automatically goes and gets it, and then it just yields whatever it needs to in here. And this is markup, which basically just allows you to type the tag that you want, followed by any parameters that you need, and then enclose any tags that are within that in a block. And it's pretty slick. Some people don't like it. I read on Justin Palmer's blog, Insight Media, that he didn't think it was cool because designers couldn't use it, and it keeps the designers out of the loop. But I don't agree. I think it's slick. It's very easy to use, and the designers hopefully not going to have to do too much messing around with the code, especially in such a small app that you'd be making in camping. But there's an homage to why. So layout is within the views, you can also call the method R, which basically will create the correct string for whatever route you want that to be. So it's basically like link to. When you're saying you want this action in this controller with these parameters, it'll generate the right string to access whatever you defined earlier in your controllers as being the routes. So for instance, here I'm saying go to images with the current ID of whatever I'm looping through, which is images.each here, and give me the thumbnail of it. So that just goes up to my image up here and sends thumb. So it's going to render the thumb as opposed to the full data. So that's pretty slick. And then you don't have to, you obviously could just write the direct URL or whatever, but abstracts that a little bit for you. The app basically that allows all the cropping is 225 lines within camping. So it's very slick. There's more JavaScript than there is code to actually run, quite a bit more. And I actually, in the spirit of camping, instead of using Prototype, I use Prototype Lite and MooFX, which is a really slimmed down version of the effects library in Scriptaculous and Prototype. I actually had to create a prototype.more, which adds a little more stuff so I could use the Scriptaculous slider right out of the box. But pretty slick. So I'll go ahead and just show you what that camping app allows me to do. So this is the actual app now running on my local host. And it's actually not running. This is cool. Visor, have you guys seen this? The Quake style, and you can put like quartz in it. Oh, sweet. I love you, Mac. Okay. So I can run Croppr here. I'll tell you more about running it. Then I'll just go to the new here. I can browse for a file on my system. Some feet. Called crop. This is then going through ImageMagick, cropping it, and then it creates the thumbnail. ImageMagick automatically has a thing where it'll just center the image, so it maintains the aspect ratio, but I can keep it at 80 by 80. And when I mouse over it, it says there's no crop yet. I can crop it at whatever I want to. Resizes the image to the size of my screen. I can then resize and move it to wherever I want, and crop it, which will reload the cropped image. Takes a little time to crop. There it is. And then this, I can do another built-in, just putting in this custom stuff, and it'll tell you if it's going to be too big or whatever. So you can put in all your custom values and have a crazy crop if you want to. Or then, again, just to demonstrate the maintaining of where it was last cropped. I went to 80 by 80. It's going to recenter the image as to where it was last cropped. So, and then also I can click on the image, which will take me to the actual crop, whatever size that might be. And you can delete the image. So all very slick in this very tight little package. So now, if you're going to be going to use this, I figured I would give to you a few things to remember because I was frustrated a few times during this process. Numero uno. Gems are great, but it's not really up to date. Camping isn't, and neither is Markabee. And I was actually running into problems when you try to get the newer camping. It was dependent upon Markabee, which it wouldn't try to get, but it wasn't yet in the gem repository or whatever. So you can actually just go directly to Y's Subversion repository, download the source, run rake gem, and then install the gem from there. And there's instructions for that on the camping wiki. Also, last time I did it, there's this weird error that comes up when you first run it, when you check out from Edge. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it'll freak you out. But just look at what it is. It's just a simple syntax error. You just got to go into the source and change. And it was like one S was missing or something. It was silly. Hopefully it's fixed. Now, a little more into the actual running of the application. So camping.goes, basically, which is run at the very beginning, allows you to specify that this application is going to be running within this module, which I tell it Croppr. Otherwise, it'll run directly in the camping module, which if you have multiple camping apps, you can get some major conflicts. So the idea is use camping.goes and put everything into your module. So right up here I have my module. I define MIME types, any constants that I want for my application. And then there's the create method. And I'll get to that in a second. By putting it into that module, this got me for a while, right when I first got started. It was very frustrating. But when you create the table, which is in that create method, you have to put the name of the module in front of it. So it's Croppr_images for my images table. Because it expects that when it's running in the Croppr module. The create method, basically a real slick thing about camping is that it allows this application to run out of the box anywhere you go, because the create gets run anytime you run the app, which basically checks to see if the table exists in whatever database you're working with, and if it doesn't, it'll create it. So it's kind of like migrations, but not really at all. But I mean, it's creating your database, so you never have to worry about creating the table in your database or any of that stuff. And one thing about that is you just reset the column information at the end of that statement, because when it calls table exists, it's going to bring in a blank set of column values, so you need to reset that before you continue in your application, otherwise your model's going to be all screwed up. But that's all ironed out. So how about running this puppy? How does that work? Well, enter the post amble. At the end of the file, you have this fun little statement, which basically means, you've probably seen this before in Ruby code, but it threw me for a little loop because I had never seen it before. But it's basically saying if you're running this file directly. So if I were to execute this file, this if file equals the $0 is saying, if I run this file directly from the command line, then this stuff's going to get executed. If I don't, it's not going to get executed. So it doesn't get run when you run camping, the name of your app. Camping comes with the camping gem when you download it. It's just a command. And what camping does, it's not going to use this post amble at all. It's just going to run WebRick to get you going. And it's also, it'll put the SQLite database in your home folder at .camping.db. So it just slaps everything there, and it doesn't ever see any of this. But if you run the script directly, which I did here, so I can go camping, and then it throws this error. I don't know what that is. Huh? Gotcha. But where? So camping will use the camping database in your home folder, and simply run WebRick. And that's bound to port 3000. Or actually, it is 3301. Oh, I just turned off my presentation. Stupid. Okay. So, now, fantastic. As you can see, it's running on 3301 just with WebRick. Now, what I did in the postamble was actually, I tell it to use SQLite and use the Croppr.db database relative to this file. So that'll actually create a file relative to this script that you're running, and it'll use that as your database. You can tell it to log some stuff into the logger, which is important when you start to run into trouble. So if you wanted to just use the camping command and run it, you would take this out of the if file condition, and then you could have some logging from active record. And then just some threaded connection stuff. It calls create. You've got to manually call create, which is that self.create that I showed you earlier, which creates the table. The camping command automatically does that. And then you can use Mongrel, and it's super easy. I just installed Mongrel last night, and you simply run, it's got camping support built in. So you run Mongrel camping start, you tell it where you want it to bind, on what port, and then where to mount it on the server, and it runs. It simply runs. It runs fast. So that's what that postamble is. What a mess I've made. Yes, now I think I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be okay. Yes, I am. I'll tell you why later. So yeah, that's what I just did. That's what I just showed you. And then basically there's a link that talks about all different postambles you could use. So you could run it just pure CGI. You could do a mod proxy type thing. There's a lot of different ways to run the camping app. More fun. It does not stop. So some new developments in the camping world. Grossenbach, our very own Ruby on Rails podcast master, created Mosquito, which is basically a little testing framework for camping. And I was a very bad boy and didn't write tests for my application, so I don't have any examples of that. But it's really slick. They're going to build some more support for it. That's my excuse. They might even build it into the camping course. I'm just going to wait until all that's built in, so I don't have to change stuff all the time. Yeah, there's the link for that. It's clever, all these plays on words. Mosquito for bug-free camping. I love it. And then it's only going to get better. Oh, I think I was talking about Mosquito. I thought I was talking about my presentation, but it's actually it's going down now. Decamper, which was recently written, there was a demand for it like 2-3 weeks ago on a blog, and Michael Daines took it upon himself to start writing this thing, and I downloaded it last night and used it, and it does a pretty decent job. Basically what Decamper does, it allows you to run the command decamp on your camping file, and it creates a new Rails project with all the stuff you made in camping. It doesn't preserve a lot of the routes. I mean, it's not going to be a fully functional project. You're going to have to, configure your database and all that. But it's only going to get better as well. Hopefully it'll do some more intuitive stuff, and basically you can make a small little camping app, and once it gets too big to go camping, you can put it into the motorhome. That is Rails. I just made that up.
I would like to see RHTML
I just read a blog entry on why actually was talking about a new, maybe not. I'm dreaming. I was up late last night getting all this stuff to work. Yeah, like I said, it's still young, so there's a lot more to come. So finally, just another example of what you can do to camping. This little app, I actually spent like an hour and a half trying to figure out how I could just get little snippets of text into Quicksilver to, I don't know, have some type of presentation on the screen without having to use Keynote or anything like that. And I was going to do AppleScript, and then I was going to try and get Quicksilver to talk to Ruby, and finally I'm like, stupid, why don't you just use camping, right? So basically I wrote another little app, which is called Present, and this one's super slim. It's 80 lines of code. One cool thing about it is camping it supports sessions, so you can do simple session type stuff. So you just require camping at session, and then you can refer to the instance variable state, which stores it in a session. And basically in your self.create, you tell it to make the camping session table, which isn't really specific to your app at all. It's just the generic camping session table, and it knows how to build that schema, and it'll build it and store everything in there. So I said I was all right earlier when my thing stopped, and then I ran it again because it went to the database to get my session, and it knew where I was at. Basically, all this app does, I have this file called notes.txt, which has all of the individual points that I was making, and the app stores the line number of the file that I'm currently on in the state variable, and then basically whenever I hit next, it will read my notes file and then get the current line out of that file. And there's a fun little extension to Quicksilver, which allows you to run QS from the terminal, which you can pipe text into that, and that brings it into Quicksilver. So there's a lot of possibilities to make some really cool, very concise and powerful. And it's rewarding to be able to fit all that power into such a tiny package. And it's quick. So I do believe that's it. Sessions, yes, I did that. Oh, yeah, another quick thing is that this one, since it was such a simple app, I have no postamble, so I just run it by camping. If I tried to run it with directly from the command line, it wouldn't do anything. And I don't have any models because I don't need them. So that's that. No. Definitely. I signed his shirt at RailsCon. He was signing everybody's shirt. Then I went to talk to him, and he asked me if I would sign his shirt. Huh? Oh, it's Visor? If you just search for Visor, the same people that make Quicksilver put together Visor. And then you can, it basically allows you to use, what are those animations? It's from the Apple, the quartz, yeah. So you can get any quartz animation and put that as a background, and you got your little quick style terminal. Not super useful, but really sexy. It is useful when you need to type something really quick. So I'm going to try and get Croppr up and available to the public, release it under an MIT license or something. So, and then Tom and I are going to hopefully work on Gravatar and get a new version of that out on Rails soon. So, right on.
That concludes this episode of the SD.RB podcast. See you next time.